Chapter 3. Mister, I was made for it. Here they are, the creatures of the night. Body snatchers, Dracula's pets. Come in and see the fiendish animals. Bone-gnawing creatures on the inside. Captured just 4 miles from Dr. Frankenstein's castle and brought here alive and breathing. Grave robbers. The devil's disciples of the animal world. Creeping, crawling, graveyard pests. A menace to the peace of the dead. Alive on the inside in a well-lighted area for you to see and study. Battlefield pests feed on dead and dying soldiers. Suggested a spiel for grind show exhibition of an armadillo, Don Bowles, the Midway Showman. After traveling with the Beatty Show through California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico, the circus season ended in October 1947, and Anton was ready to move on. Life as a lion trainer and circus musician was lively enough, but he suspected there were still horizons to explore, seamier ways of making a living. He'd heard from his circus cronies about the differences between working the carnival circuits and working in a circus. Circus people considered what they did real art, dazzling family entertainment compared with the cheap tricks and mitt-camp aspects of the carnival. Circus people think carnies are sociopaths, drifters, marginals trying to run away from the law or some nefarious activity or other, trying to get lost. Carnies think circus people are wage slaves and prima donnas, that they only need skills, not street smarts, that they're just performers, and have no need for real mental acuity. This was enough to encourage Anton to get off-season work with various West Coast amusement facilities such as the Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach, California, where he played the steam calliope across from Professor Theobald's flea circus. Professor Theobald was a rather eccentric German gentleman who enjoyed rolling up his sleeves and letting his fleas feast on his arms for their dinner. He blustered against LeVay's noisy calliope, complaining that the music upset his tiny performers. "Please, it's disturbing my fleas. They will not performing right." He'd plead with me to play more softly. You can't play a calliope softly. It's either loud or not at all. I could never get through to him, much as I sympathized. There were plenty of interesting characters for LeVay to meet on the carny circuit. Francisco Lentini made something positive out of having 3 legs, using his 3rd leg for a stool when he went fishing, and always dancing with the prettiest girls on any dance floor, inventing a unique waltz that made them the center of attraction. He was the only person I ever saw who danced in 5/4 time. Tchaikovsky could have written some great stuff for him. Though Lentini didn't mind being born with 3 legs, he was rather self-conscious about a little finger-like appendage that grew out of his 3rd leg and always wore extra long socks to cover it. Anton also liked the human ostrich, Jacob Heilberger, who had mastered his stomach reflexes so well that he could regurgitate objects at will. He was a highly cultured Jewish engineer, educated at Berlin University, who had fled Germany when the Nazis came to power. Disguising his brains and education, Heilberger horrified audiences by swallowing live mice, golf balls, and eggs that hatched into live chicks, jumping out of his mouth. Of course, there was the sex show, which was presented in the guise of an educational hygiene lecture, to avoid getting harassed by the local clergy or shut down by the cops. Dr. Hart played the sex doctor, later to become Dr. Elliot Forbes, assisted by pulchritudinous girls in scanty nurses' uniforms who pointed out various parts of the anatomy on oversized charts. Usually there were Kroger Bab films or Army training films on the dangers of VD shown, complete with decaying noses of men and the advanced stages of syphilis, which Anton delighted in accompanying by playing Clair de Lune and other classical pieces. By the time the film was over, many of the men who had been suckered into buying a ticket had already slunk out to the side of the tent, leaving their snow cones and popcorn uneaten beneath the seats, and swearing off sex forever. Anton went on to work the biggest traveling shows on the Pacific Coast. Carnivals like Kraft's 20 Big Shows, West Coast shows in Foley and Burke. They'd set up next to circuses in big cities like L.A. In smaller cities, some carnies would show up to be part of the Midway independently. At county fairs, on rodeo lots, dirt lots, football fields. They mostly brought sparkle and excitement to thriving farm communities like Modesto, Turlock, and Redding, and rustic backwater towns like Crow's Landing, Ceres, Atwater. LeVay played either a Calliope, Wurlitzer band organ, or Hammond along every midway, providing music to keep people moving among the various attractions. His beloved shit kicker, aircraft plant, shipyard music, roly-poly, detour, sunflower, no vacancy, dear Okie, in addition to more mainstream standards. LeVay experimented with the various sound effects built into the band organ for use on the midway or merry-go-round. Drums, gong, trolley bell, tambourines, bird whistles, horses' hooves, horns, all add that jangling off-rhythmic quality to the music associated most with the combined midway smells of popcorn, sawdust, and cotton candy. The Bally platform, sporting exaggerated paintings of what could be seen and experienced inside the tent flaps, provided an excellent viewing place from which Anton could witness yet another side of human nature. Though the carnivals were small, the gaudy canvases, impelling music, and grotesque exhibits combined to draw hundreds of circus folks from the surrounding countryside. They all came, dressed up in their Sunday best, hoping to see something spicy, hoping to win something special, hoping to see something they would never forget. LeVay was also recruited to play for the traveling tent show revival meetings on Sunday. Circuses and carnivals used to be considered the work of the devil in the 19th century, when shows traveled in wagons and disapproving clergymen had real power. Then evangelists wised up that they could take advantage of carnival organists and crowds gathered by the entertainments. They began to tolerate us in true Christian modification. Barton Wolf's introduction to the Satanic Bible quotes LeVay on his telling observations of these one-day-a-week Christians. On Saturday night, I would see men lusting after half-naked girls dancing at the carnival. And on Sunday morning, when I was playing the organ for tent show evangelists at the other end of the carnival lot, I would see these same men sitting in the pews with their wives and children, asking God to forgive them and purge them of carnal desires. And the next Saturday night, they'd be back at the carnival or some other place of indulgence. I knew then that the Christian church thrives on hypocrisy, and that man's carnal nature will out. The midway runs in an oval all around the carnival, with rides, games, concessions, and food stands on either side, and the shows way at the other end of the oval opposite the gate. The carnival backlot is where the real action is. The Mitt Camp, the girl show, the 10-and-1 freaks, the crime show, the pickled punks exhibit, ordered direct from Tate's Curiosity Shop, Devil Baby, $75, Mummified Bodies, $50. Inside the show tents, Anton played Hammond organ for the hoochie coochie girls and hula hula dancers. There were always plenty of girls around the carnival, both working and coming to see the show. Several carny acts used girls for flash. The girly shows and sex shows, though, were for different purposes. The girly shows were like traveling strip joints. The girls would come out on the bally platform to flaunt their stuff, then the talkers got the gentlemen inside for the strip. It was usually a 50-cent blow-off. Then, once inside, they would give either a soft or hardcore show, depending on how solid the canvasmen had been able to fix it with the law. The sex show was another thing altogether. It was a doctor and naughty nurse setup, where the blow-off would most likely be a secrets of hygiene demonstration, following a miracle of life grind show. That's where they left swearing they'd never look at a sexy woman again. LaVey explains that none of the carnies had affairs with the female carny performers, that it would be regarded as something akin to incest. With discretion, it was expected that relationships would occur with the girls who came for the glitter and excitement of the carnival. Blatant chasers, however, were poison to carnival operators, classified with drunks and agitators, with most job offers posted in the Billboard, the weekly newspaper covering the outdoor amusement industry, instructing such types to stay where you are. Anton had liaisons with girl towners who paraded around the Midway, all dressed up to see the closest thing they'd ever get to glamour, or local girls who got a bug in them to be movie stars, and their first step was joining the carnival as a dancer. They usually would only get as far as the next small town, then give up. If the show played a town where a midnight spook show happened to be playing at the local theater, LaVey endeavored to assist the likes of Dr. Zom, Dr. Doom, and Dr. Tomb by throwing spaghetti and grapes with shouts of worms and eyeballs from the balconies of pitch-dark, small-town theaters into the laps of the audience below. Sometimes Anton worked the rides, or, when the funhouse blowhole operated need to be relieved, LaVey was his enthusiastic stand-in. There was also the 10 in 1, where all the freaks and sideshow performers were featured. The Sword Swallower, the Pinhead, the India Rubber Man, the Glass Eater, the Alligator Boy, Grace McDaniels, the Mule-Faced Woman, and Johnny Eck, the Incredible Half-Man. As always, LaVey found freaks among those which society in general would consider outcasts. Freaks were the royalty of the carnival world. They got validation they never would have gotten on the outside. The human oddities, natural freaks, were in a much more esteemed position than sword walkers or fire eaters, or even tattooed people, who all had to learn their freakish talents, or, in the case of tattoos, modify their bodies to make themselves distinguished. The natural freaks, literally, had a special birthright. More than any of the other shows, LaVey enjoyed working the Mitt Camp, where all the mystics, fortune-tellers, gypsy palm readers, hypnotists, and magicians were gathered. There, Anton learned all the secrets of the Romani trade he could glean. Joe Calgary taught LaVey the magic of billet reading, describing, while blindfolded, what is written on a paper concealed inside a sealed envelope. Johnny Starr, a flashy carny pitchman, taught Anton how to play Swami by sitting behind a table in a turban while a pretty girl collected folded messages from audience members, brought them onto the platform, and dropped them into a clouded crystal bowl. when the messages would fall directly through the bowl, down a chute to the eager hands of LeVay under the stage. Anton would open the papers up, shine a flashlight on them, and display them through a magnifying lens for the Swami star to see on stage. The turbaned showman would miraculously recite exactly what the audience members had written, to their stupefied delight and wild applause. Johnny wore the turban, or some other kind of hat, not originally as an affectation, but to cover a tantalum plate in his head, the result of a war injury. LeVay watched and listened attentively, learning everything he could: phrenology, palmistry, astrology, and magic tricks. He worked up an impressive act for himself as a hypnotist in the 10 and 1, with the high point coming when he made a girl as stiff as a board, stretching her across 2 chairs and letting someone sit on her. By this time, LeVay's image had become stereotypical carny: flashy sports coats, hand-painted ties, pencil-thin mustache. He was getting more than a college education could ever teach him. A confidence man's education, and hustling, exploiting man's carnal nature, and enjoyed looking the part. The scar on his cheek he'd received in a knife fight with a friend only added a sinister, jaded quality to his features. Through his carny experiences, he learned how much people would demand and pay to be fooled. How ghouls looked for always ghastlier thrills. How voyeurs wanted newer, more prurient treats. How the lonely and the sick wanted miracles. And how they hate you when they're not fooled enough. The carny magician knows there aren't any miracles. There is only what you make happen in life yourself. Yet people will always be willing to throw away their money for just a chance to win flash. Rhinestone bracelets, cheap wristwatches, giant plush animals, or slum. Worthless token prizes. Monster Midway and Step Right Up, 2 of the few bread and butter books on carnivals, were written by a couple of LeVay's cronies, William Lindsay Gresham and Daniel P. Mannix. Though Gresham's association was cut short by his tragic death, LeVay, as of this writing, still maintains friendly correspondence with Dan Mannix. LeVay memorialized his friendship with Gresham in the names of his daughter and grandson, Zena and Stanton. Named after characters in Gresham's other famous carnival novel, Nightmare Alley. The Midway Showman is another fine book covering the subject, in which author Don Bowles writes, "The ability to treat ordinary subjects in a grand manner, to invent tinseled lies about them, and the gall to sell tickets to their exhibition qualify a man for the showman's trade. Here, humbuggery is comparable to magic. Carnival showmen feel it is permissible to fool people so long as you give them their money's worth in entertainment." LeVay has been put down on many occasions for being a circus and carnival background, as if it were proof that he's really a charlatan. But as LeVay himself explains, the subculture of the carnival has its own standards, its own principles. In the carny, we knew who was fake and who was the genuine article. Traveling tent show evangelists hung around carnivals like lot lice. No one liked them. They'd always come around where there was a good tip worked up. All of them admitted they were in the Jesus racket and just took advantage of the tip that the carnival gathered. At least in those days, not many of them pretended to really believe any of the bullshit they were selling. They just figured they were taking advantage of the rubes like any of the other traveling shows. Like undertakers, they would joke and crack wise about what they were doing when they were out of Aunt Minnie's earshot. More than a few of them eventually ended up in Folsom or San Quentin if they happened to fleece the wrong person. But if they were at least honest, you could have some respect for them. That's Carney law. Laura the Pitiful, come in and see the devil's child. See her alive on the inside. Better shorten her chain, boys, she's getting restless. Listen to her scream. What's she doing now? Throw her another chicken, she might be hungry. Watch her jump. Listen to her howl. Abandoned as a child to be reared among wild animals. Grunts, growls, screams, and howls. But poor Laura can't speak a word. See her now. See how low a human being can go. Once seen, never forgotten.